In the afternoon, Yin Shen made an appointment with a friend and had tea in a refreshment restaurant. Yin Shen stretched out his hand from the second floor. Here. A man in the lobby saw him immediately and walked up with a smile. Kuntu Man is an internet writer and a classmate of Yin Shen's university. This kind of person knows a little bit about everything, but they are not so in-depth. As an object of small talk, it is really appropriate. Yin Shen likes to chat with him. He likes to talk about science and science fiction, mythology and history, astronomy and geography, military and civil news, etc. Is not very strict, or pure nonsense, but it feels very relaxing. This time, the two talked about mythology from history, and from mythology to legendary novels, which are also mixed with Western rumors. Yin Shen suddenly said, "Recently, when I fall asleep in the middle of the night, I always feel that another self suddenly gets up from my body. Then all night, I watched myself until I woke up. It's kind of like Western soul projection, as well as the yin in your novels." You said, "What's the situation?" The inch-headed man did not laugh at Yin Shen's words full of absurdity, instead he thought about it for a while and organized the language. The first thing that needs to be understood is that if a person really has a soul, what is the composition of a person's soul? Is it matter or energy? Yin Shen thought for a while, and said uncertainly, "It doesn't seem to be either." The inch-headed man then asked, "So what about memory and consciousness? Is it in the soul or still in the brain?" Yin Shen said with confirmation, "It's in the soul. I feel my body is like an anchor point, anchoring my soul to this point. I obviously can get out with just one struggle, but I feel that when I get out, something terrible will happen. This feeling made me panic inexplicably, and then I didn't dare to go down and do it again." Yin Shen suddenly laughed, "Do you think I want to awaken some superpowers, or start to cultivate immortals?" The inch-headed man shook his head, "For the time being, it doesn't matter if what you are saying is true or not. If a person really has a soul, and it does not belong to matter and energy, even memory and consciousness can be stored in it, then it is not a superpower or something. Xiaoxian can compare it. What kind of soul projection, what kind of yin travels, are just the existence that the ancients imagined, and compared with it, it is like the difference between the sky and the earth. Even the gods in historical mythology and the immortals in Taoist legends cannot match this kind of existence. Even Pangu, the creator god, Brahma, cows and Asithas, who pioneered the world, have nothing to do with you." Yin Shen was stunned on the spot when he heard these words. He was still talking about human souls just now, so why did he get involved with these creators and the supreme gods among the myths? "You can't say anything, is there such a good one? According to what you said, if a person has a soul, he can be directly invincible." The inch-headed man said seriously, "I didn't talk nonsense, but had solid evidence. Because the universe is composed of matter, and time is the manifestation of the movement, the continuity of change, and the sequence of matter. If your soul does not belong to matter and energy, consciousness is not based on the brain but the soul. What does this mean? Your soul and this universe are like two non-overlapping planes. You can transcend outside of this universe, even without being constrained by time. Think about it, isn't it like this?" Yin Shen continued, "Doesn't that mean that once the soul is free from the of the body, it will immediately leave the universe? Even the soul can directly transcend the long river of time, travel through space and years, and become an existence floating on the timeline. I can even travel to any era, even tampering with history." The inch-headed man said his own thoughts again, "This is not necessarily true." Yin Shen asked, "Why?" "Inch-head man, I just said that the soul and the universe you are talking about are like two non-overlapping planes, there is no point of cross-linking at all. You are not related to the universe, so from what angle do you perceive the existence of the universe? You can't even perceive the universe, so how can you perceive time, and how can you travel further on the timeline?" Yin Shen suddenly had an answer to the source of that fear. So, once the soul leaves the body, it is like a ship that has lost its coordinates and direction. It is very likely that it will leave the universe and never find its direction back. The inch-headed man nodded. One possibility is that you still have a connection with the real universe, and there is an anchor here. In this way, you can observe the universe through this anchor point, and as I said before, become an observer outside the universe and time. If you have different anchor points at different time periods, you may even become the same as you said, a shuttle in the timeline. At this point, the words of the inch-headed man became gloomy. But there is another possibility. The moment you leave the anchor point of your body, you are thrown into an unknown place outside the universe. There may be another universe, it may be the source of time, or it may be another dimension or unknown that humans cannot imagine. There may be nothing there, just like a prison, but where your soul will be trapped, 10 million years, 100 million years. Until eternal. The scene fell silent for a moment, and no one spoke for a while. At this time, the inch-headed man suddenly laughed, and he picked up the teapot and filled it with Yin Shen Man. You have a good idea, quite innovative. My next new book wants to use your setting, maybe it will be popular. The inch-headed man did not take what Yin Shen said seriously, thinking that it was just the same as usual. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com carried out another unconstrained imagination and unrestrained empty talk. However, Yin Shen was in a complicated mood, and he stood up and prepared to leave. I'm leaving now. If you write it out, or if you have any new ideas, remember to tell me and we will discuss them together. However, the inch-headed man stopped him and took out something from his backpack. Yin Shen, don't leave yet. With your settings, I will give you a good thing. Yin Shen took the box that the inch-headed man gave him and opened it. It was an irregular stone with an exquisite insect pattern on it. What is this? A fossil. Inch-head male, Lednik, a kind of trilobite. Although this fossil is not worth a lot of money, but thinking about seeing creatures from hundreds of millions of years ago appearing vividly in front of you, it feels like you can't buy this kind of shock for a lot of money. Take it back and put it at home, imagine and feel the vicissitudes of the ancient earth and these ancient creatures hundreds of millions of years ago. Yin Shen thanked the Kuntiv man Syat, walked and looked at the present while holding the gift. However, just walking to the lobby, an out-of-control car suddenly crashed into the glass door of the hall from the street outside at a speed of more than 100 yards, and rolled onto Yin Shen with layers of glass shards. Yin Shen took the fossil in his hand and was knocked out like a rag. In the pool of blood, Yin Shen's eyes gradually blurred. Who is driving so drifting, able to drive all the way from the main road to the lobby of the restaurant? Waiting to see clearly, but suddenly relieved. Oh! It turned out to be Tesla. Yin Shen felt him fly out of his body, slowly drifting towards the sky. He overlooked the building, the city, and the mainland. Even overlooks the earth. He flew higher and higher, he drifted above the orbit, and suddenly found that the earth was changing rapidly. There is no city in the blink of an eye, and even no trace of human beings. The continents section was actually moving, and green plants gradually covered everything. Yin Shen immediately understood what happened. Time is changing at an accelerating rate. The moment I perceive now may even be 100,000 years or 1,000,000 years. I just don't know whether it is upstream or downstream. If it is downstream, does it mean that all human beings are extinct? He looked at the universe, and then was pulled by an invisible force or thrown into the vast universe, and disappeared on the earth. Eternal silence enveloped him. He saw the birth and annihilation of countless stars, and saw galaxies collapse rapidly. He has never imagined that there is such a wonder in the world, majestic enough to make people change his beliefs, feel that his life and everything he pursues is so ridiculous, and even feel terrified for his mediocre life. Does our ephemeral life really have any meaning? Is the birth of life, the origin of civilization, and the magnificence of technology really as great as human beings claim? The life of mankind, even the history of the race named human, and even the entire earth. Yin Shen can only use one sentence he has heard at this moment to describe. We are the dust. The races and civilizations called human beings are like a gleam of light suddenly emerging from a corner of the universe. Is fleeting in the blink of an eye, meaningless. No attention, no care, nothing can be changed. We originate, we are born, we shine with brilliance as far as we can, and we will eventually pass away irretrievably. Disappeared in the tiny island in the corner of the universe, disappeared in a moment that was not a blink of an eye for the universe. Yin Shen's mind was shocked, and being able to see such a strange scene, his dark and short life seemed to finally have a glimmer of light. He turned into a beam of light and headed toward the depths of the universe. Time is flowing backwards, he is heading towards the origin of everything in a way that transcends time and space and dimensions. It seems that at the source of that time, there is a strong gravitational force dragging him towards the beginning of everything. At last, the stars are annihilated, and the universe is unified. Everything disappeared. He also reached the end. This is where? Yin Shen asked himself. There is no such thing as darkness in this place, and even Yin Shen feels that he has disappeared, only one consciousness is silent in the endless emptiness. This is a place without space, time, and everything. He can only answer himself, because he may be the first living entity to arrive here, and the only existence in this place. Am I being thrown out of the universe? Or into an unknown dimension? He couldn't shout, he couldn't perceive any existence. He suddenly felt terrified, and his friend's words echoed in his ears. There may be another universe, it may be the source of time, or it may be another dimension or unknown that humans cannot imagine. There may be nothing there, just like a prison, but where your soul will be trapped, 10 million years, 100 million years. Until eternal. For a moment, he panicked to the extreme. But as soon as he realized this idea, he suddenly saw a light shining in front of him. He heard the sound of the sea and the tide, and he felt very clear and warm just by listening to the sound. He even felt the bubbles rise from his side and float upward. Rushing, grunting. The voice moved him. The sea appeared in front of him, and the bottom of sand and gravel appeared. He saw a three-leaf-shaped bug that was not the size of a finger crawling into the distance in the gravel, and a long noodle-shaped bug entangled up in the sea water. Trilobites named leadericky worms, and unknown worms that are too small to detect. He remembered the words of his friend again, and realized what had happened. Anchor. My anchor points on the earth appeared. They allowed me to observe the earth. They are my eyes, my anchor, and coordinates in the vast sea. He did not expect that it was the trilobite fossil given to him by his friend that made him anchor the earth again, pulling him out of the eternal darkness and bottomless abyss. It's just that the other party didn't expect that there was not only a trilobite in the fossil, but also a worm from a distant era. He stretched out his hand to catch the bug named Ledrich. He broke free from the cage and returned to the universe again. Consciousness was pulled into the earth, and pulled back from the unknown place beyond the universe beyond time. Anchored at a time node in the vast universe for hundreds of millions of years, anchored on an inconspicuous planet in a remote star field. This is a shallow sea, and the sun shines from above. The seabed is full of various ancient algae and naked fern plants, and there are large areas of seabed plants that look like tulips, floating and shaking gently through the waves. There are also cactus-like sponges, with sharp long-pointed spicules extending from the outer wall. Soft-tongued snails were embedded in the sand, and he also saw patches of trilobite crawling on the gravel. Yin Shen walked up the bottom of the sea step by step. He was at a loss, but at a loss. He felt the anomaly here. This should be the earth, but it cannot be the earth he is familiar with. He finally walked out of the shallow sea and stood on the ground. Barren ground, empty continent. Yin Shen looked at the earth billions of years ago, looked at the clear sky and the sun, there is only one man named him in the entire world. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. This is the Earth in the primordial era. He was standing on the coast, but the sea behind him made a huge wave and burst into loud noise. Boom! The worm mutated itself with the appearance of Yin Shen. It swallows gravel, seaweed, and ocean water, and it swells into a behemoth tens of meters high in the blink of an eye. Whether it is a plant or a living thing, it has been integrated by it, and has become a part of it. It can be seen that a huge snail shell grows on its back, spikes grow inside its body, and strange tentacles protrude from the snail shell. The flesh and blood split a series of gaps, and the green eyeballs that permeated people opened from them, looking in all directions. This is a terrifying deformity monster. In this era, he is an invincible overlord in size. And accompanied by Yin Shen's gaze, this giant beast was crawling on the ground, not daring to move, humble as if it had no ego. Immediately afterwards, a growing trilobite slowly crawled out in the shallow sea. It is constantly changing as it climbs out of the water. It has grown a human-like torso, has grown limbs, and has grown a head. Transformed into a humanoid creature covered with a black carapace, with a three-leaf bone helmet wrapped tightly. The creature walked to the coast little by little. He looked forward to Yin Shen standing on the shore and came to him step by step. Yin Shen could feel his emotions, and he touched his fingers on the bone helmet on top of the opponent's head. Listening to the oldest life on this planet, she shouted out the first sentence of the planet's language, the first bite. God. Yin Shen stood above the sea, driving the monster-like giant insect under his feet, riding the wind and waves. The day here seems to be shorter, the day is long and the night is short, and life can only exist in the sea. According to Yin Shen's inference, he is now on the earth nearly 500 million years ago from his time. Cambrian. He has only read records about this era in textbooks. A warm climate, a bright sun during the day, the moon stimulating the tides, and countless lives in the sea are flourishing. They are evolving. All things make a choice, vying for the position of the final winner, vying for the supremacy of this planet. And he himself is an existence incompatible with this world. He can't touch everything, let alone interfere with the existence in the universe. Except for the two beings who perceive him. Only they can observe the existence of Yin Shen, and the objects Yin Shen can touch are only the two of them. Perhaps, he doesn't actually exist for this universe. Is like a ghost wandering in the cracks of time and space. The trilobites and worms, because they have spied on Yin Shen, an existence that is beyond the universe and time, and gained power from him, which is derived from what Yin Shen previously called the soul. The two creatures of the primordial earth era had different powers. One got wisdom from God Yin, and the other got the ability to merge with God. The trilobite has gained the wisdom of Yin Shen, and within the hard-shelled armor, organs like the human brain have grown. He knew some human words, and at the moment he was born, he spied some pictures in Yin Shen's memory, and possessed the advanced creative thinking ability that resembled human beings. The worm has acquired a more peculiar and mysterious power. Its blood has been integrated with the power of Yin Shen, and has undergone changes under the radiation of its body. It can fuse with other beings, deprive other living beings of their organs and abilities, and can change their form wantonly. But unfortunately, the worm still acts as before, relying on instinct. The one who got wisdom is called the Saniaran by Yin Shen. And that worm was named the fusion monster by him. Under the feet, the existence named fusion monster is quickly shuttled above the sea surface, and the tentacles under the spiral shell swiftly waved and pushed it forward. Yin Shen was standing on its shell, looking into the distance. In the distant sea, something different finally appeared. Something bulged out of the water, and cast a long shadow on the sea in the afterglow of the setting sun. Shabu. Strange fusion of fast swimming, tentacles struck the crowded waters. Yin Shen saw an isolated island with a rare green color on it. There are pits and pits on the isolated island, swamps, covered with lichen and moss. But compared to other land, here is already full of breath of life. It's good here. Yin Shen decided to stay here and end the long and aimless trip. The next day, Yin Shen saw the fusion monster use its flexible tentacles to excavate blocks of boulders from the bottom of the sea and drag them onto the island. Its tentacles can be turned into sharp weapons like chisels, or blunt tools like hammers, which are beating and dividing these boulders. At first, Yin Shen only regarded this bug as having a hobby of dragging stones, and didn't care, but when he saw this giant building up blocks of boulders, he realized that it was a building. Upon closer inspection, I found that this thing was somewhat similar to the pyramid that Yin Shen had seen on TV before, but this one was even more magnificent. The huge boulders with a height of more than 10 meters are erected, making people feel that this is definitely not a creation of mortals, but a miracle of gods. But as the boulder was built to the highest point, different places appeared. The fusion monster turned to the base to carve a simple and heavy temple, which carefully grinds, beats, and engraves the details. But it still looks crude and simple, but the outline of the palace has emerged. This temple was obviously not built for itself. With its huge size, the temple is really small. Yin Shen realized that the fusion monster was going to build a huge palace on the isolated island for Yin Shen. At first thought, he thought that the fusion monster was trying to please him, but he didn't think it should. The chaotic and ignorant fusion monster did not have this kind of wisdom, let alone the existence of the pyramid. Should have been ordered by the Sanyi people. San Yuan crawled in front of Yin Shen in fear. Yin Shen looked at the waves quietly, his emotions were very peaceful. When he still had a human body, he was a relatively sloppy person. Now without a body, he has experienced the most bizarre experiences in the world, and he has become more and more quiet. However, Sanyaran was scared. He didn't know whether he liked or disliked God's propositions. He explained in a panic, and kept kowtow at the same time. In his knowledge, this is the most direct way to pray to God and ask for forgiveness. God. The palace, the palace. Yin Shen can perceive his meaning. He said that the gods should live in the palace and accept the worship of all life, so he let the fusion monster build this building. Yin Shen is not happy, or does not care very much. After all, he has no body and cannot feel the warmth and cold. Buildings sheltered from wind and rain are meaningless to him. The so-called beliefs and prayers also seem ridiculous to him, because he enshrines and believes in two insects. If I have to say something, I can only compliment it for fun. Good. Very beautiful. Is just a short sentence, which makes Sanyi people dance and dance with joy. The palace finally took shape. Sanyaran waited for Yin Shen on the pyramid, and the fusion monster carried Yin Shen to the top of the pyramid, then stopped and stuck his head in front of the temple. At the top of the pyramid, reading www.yukanshu.com's quaint and heavy palace has open doors and windows, and there are no furnishings inside. The only bright spot is that it is big and magnificent. Inside there is also a statue of God Yin, which was carved by Sanyi himself and was a gift he gave to the gods. It seems that the Sanyaran also inherited the dexterous hands of human beings, and they have power far beyond that of human beings. This idol is carved from a whole piece of unknown white stone. It is more like a relief than the idol, placed in front of the round window facing the sun. Above is a figure that exudes endless light, and it looks like it is covered with a white coat. You can only see the outline at a glance, and you can't see the appearance at all. Yin Shen only then realized that they saw him in this way. San Yuan crawled on the ground, still calling Yin Shen a god. This is a general term. Yin Shen told him his name, Yin Shen. Sanyaran, Yin Yin Sai. The man then told him, Yin Shen. Sanyaran, Insai. When is alone, he can still pronounce the word correctly, but when connected together, he changes the tone. Sanyi people's pronunciation organs are still different from humans, and the syllables they emit are dry and sharp, which makes people feel a little harsh. Yin Shen corrected it again, Yin Shen. Saint held his head high, for a long time, and finally shouted. Insai! Sen! Insai God! Yin Shen was gone by him, and he was allowed to call Yinsai God, Yinshen God, beside the and Yin Shen, shouting fanatically. Under the pyramid, the terrifying beast also made a hollow sound. It was a bit new to live in this tall temple at the beginning, but Yin Shen felt bored day after day. He will not grow old, nor will he die. But there is no body, just a lonely soul wandering in the ocean of the primordial earth. There is only one fusion monster swimming in the sea with a grunting sound forever, and there is a three-leaf man talking with him. Yin Shen stands on the high temple, overlooking the vast ocean and the entire island. The world is so vast that the entire world belongs to him alone, yet he feels that he is still a prisoner. He was not imprisoned in the eternal prison, but he was imprisoned in a cage called time. Insai! Sen! Because, Sai, God! Outside the temple. At the gate where the sun shone in, a person blocked the light and pulled out a long shadow in the palace. Julie dragged a behemoth much larger than him and sent it to the platform in front of the temple. The shadow suddenly fell short and turned into a ball. He knelt on the side of the huge pillar of the temple, crawling toward the stalwart in his heart and the who gave him wisdom. Sanyue people brought some rare things in the ocean to Yin Shen, to win a moment of joy from the gods or a curve of the corner of his mouth, or an admiring look. This time it was a strange shrimp, a giant more than 5 meters long, the most powerful overlord in the ocean in this era. It can be seen that Saint spent a lot of effort to catch this strange shrimp, and even had some scars on the hard carapace outside. Insai zone. Insai God. Yin Shen, who was sitting on the stone platform of the statue, finally laughed, which made the Saint man kneeling outside ecstatic, and immediately followed and danced. It's just that he didn't know that Yin Shen smiled because he was able to call out a 3-character name, even if the name was called wrong. Not because he offered rare things in the ocean. Yin Shen walked down from the stone platform and looked at the giant that was placed on the stone platform. It was a giant like a shrimp. A pair of big claws on the head trembled suddenly and hit the stone. A gap was knocked directly above the stone. This makes Saint furious and panic. Yai the Saint screamed wildly, trying to kill this foolish, wise bug who dared to be disrespectful to God. Yin Shen has no idea, only thinks this shrimp is really big. It turned out to be a strange shrimp. He stretched out his hand, but suddenly remembered that he couldn't touch anything except Saint and Fusion Monster. This makes Yin Shen's eyes a little lonely. Smiled, and said, "I've seen it, don't waste it." Yin Shen's thoughts moved, and a huge wave was set off in the sea. A real behemoth broke through the water and came towards the pyramid. Gurulu the fusion monster climbed up along the pyramid, dragged away the 6-meter-long giant with its tentacles, and then swallowed it like a jelly bean. The overlord of the ocean in the ancient times is not worth mentioning in front of monsters like myths like Fusion Monster. Yin Shen stood at the door of the temple. Behind him, the mythical monster satisfactorily swallowed the snacks that the gods bestowed on him, and the Saint on the side followed closely. This picture is scary enough, but the 3 people in the picture take it as ordinary. He stopped suddenly and looked at the relief carved on the pillar beam. There is no color, but the characters come alive. There are high-rise buildings, busy traffic, and countless figures walking in the bustling streets. This is a 3-leaf man with dexterous hands. He has inherited the wisdom of Yin Shen, and at the same time has some pictures in his memory. It's just that he doesn't understand what is on these pictures. He can't understand why there are so many people, why these people are different from himself. Didn't understand those iron birds flying in the sky, what were the boxes running on the ground. He only knew that God likes these things, so he carved these pictures all over the inside and outside of the temple. They stopped for a long time under these murals and reliefs, without saying a word. Today is different, he points to a tiny invisible figure in the picture. Look! This is a person. Saint also said quickly, nodding his head as if impatiently affirming his identity. I also human. Yin Shen shook his head. You are not human. You are Sanieran. You are a smart creature made by me, transformed into a human form by a trilobite. Sanieran don't understand the difference between people and Sanieran. Yin Shen walked between the corridors outside the temple. I am alone, and you are alone. The human race has not been born in this world, and the Sanyi is the only one you are. Sanieran knew the concept of race for the first time, and he finally knew that Sanieran was not his name, but God's name for his race. And him. Not human. Sanieran felt sad for the first time, and he was very sad. Inside God. I, also, want a name. Yin Shen suddenly came up with an idea. Since the fusion monster can fuse and replicate the characteristics of life, why not use the power of the fusion monster to completely create the trifoliate race? Sanieran knelt on the ground and begged. Yin Shen said a name casually. Lednik. Your name is Ledliki. Sanieran cheered again. He was like a child. Sadness comes fast, and it goes fast. Fusion monster is an unscientific mythical creation, a biological machine tool. It can plunder the organs of other organisms, and violently merge the characteristics and gene fragments of other organisms. Yin Shen is ready to use its power to create a fertilized egg or embryo with Ledrich and his predecessor Trilobite, and then create a race through the power of the fusion monster. But this biological machine is not very accurate, and the output is more like a random box. It takes some luck to produce the creation in the goal, which is full of uncertainty. But Yin Shen has no worries and thinks he will succeed. Because he now has nothing, reading www.yuyuganshu.com except for one thing. That is time. The mythical behemoth heard the call of the god's will and climbed up to the temple. The Roshan-like body squeezed in towards the palace, with green strange eyes of various sizes peeking into it. God stood in the hall, watching it. I want you to give me the snail shell. Is it okay? The mythical power of the fusion monster is basically concentrated on the shell, and the fusion monster itself is just a control center. So its shell can be removed, so Yin Shen can use it as he wants. Fusion monster, Gurulu. Hundreds of big scary eyes stared at Yin Shen, but Yin Shen felt a hint of innocence. It doesn't understand what Yin Shen is saying, let alone what the sentence pattern of such inquiry means. It is a God-made thing that only needs Yin Shen to enter a command to follow the command line, even if it does not understand what the command means. Is more like a tool than the servant of God. How to use it is the will of God, it has no idea of its own. Yin Shen stroked its skin. I asked you wrong. He felt a bit of sympathy for the fusion monster for a moment. It turns out that wisdom is also a power that belongs to mythology. Yin Shen originally felt that compared with the miracle-like abilities of the fusion monster, Sanyi Ren was simply weak. Now I feel that the wisdom and power possessed by the Sanyi people are the real myths and miracles. People always feel that what they have is worthless. But I never thought about it, that is already the supreme myth and power in the vast universe. Yin Shen put his hands on the huge eyes of the fusion monster, as if he was touching a huge cold crystal. His will stretched in through his pupils, and said in a commanding tone. Move off the snail shell and give it to me. Tentacles stretched out from under the curled belly, lifting the screw shell on the back little by little. The huge spiral shell is bigger than the temple, placed on the front steps of the temple. The fusion monster lay underneath, as if it was a gift to God. Yin Shen only wanted to touch the shell, but he found that after touching it with his hand, the shell actually floated directly. As soon as his mind moved, the spiral shell floated higher and higher. He can control this thing. Yin Shen seems to have found a big toy. This is the first time he can touch and directly manipulate something, just like a part of his body. If you want it to go there, go there. Yin Shen tried to move other things, but found no effect. The only thing he can move is the shell. Finally, the huge snail shell kept shrinking with his thoughts. When he held it in his hand, the shell was like a horn. It seems that as long as it blows, it can play the melody of life. This really is miracle. Yin Shen has a preliminary understanding of this mythological creation. It can be controlled in space, and it can also be changed in size. The things that have been impregnated by my power are not viewed in accordance with the laws of science at all. Yin Shen guessed. The power of the Sanyi people is not only that, there should be more power and use methods that have not been discovered. But how to use his own power to infiltrate other things, so that it has the power of a myth, Yin Shen still has not figured out the key. He is imprisoned in the crevice of time and space, and can only rely on the trilobite Lednik and the fusion monster to maintain himself and the anchor of the universe. His current preliminary plan is to create more trilobites, to see if can form more anchor points. It would be better if you could have a body again. This kind of life like a lonely ghost is really terrifying. Yin Shen held the shell in his hand and stood up. I saw the fusion monster staring at him, and the fusion monster became even more terrifying after removing the shell. Yin Shen looked at the fusion monster. Since you can change your form, then become a more comfortable form. It looks so scary. Although only Yin Shen is alone, the fusion monster can't scare him. But is indeed too ugly. The huge fusion monster felt Yin Shen's emotions, and the Roshan-like body squeezed toward the middle. The body size is getting smaller and smaller. Hundreds of eyes kept constricting and twisting towards the body, gradually turning into a human appearance. The dense tentacles constricted and turned into two legs like Yin Shen. Fusion turned into a little girl in a white veil cloak, with green eyes, brown hair, bare feet, and pink nails. The tulle-like cloak of light gauze is very elegant, and it wraps her petite body tightly. But when I look closely, I realize that it is not so much clothes as it is a layer of jellyfish umbrella that grows directly from the body. Became a humanoid, and it felt like it was no longer an object. He chose a name for the Sanyi, and naturally he would not favor one or the other, and he was also going to give this life that was also born with the Sanyi a name. Sally. You will be called Sally from now on. Fusion monster Sally is sitting next to the god, leaning against the stone statue of the god. She has the name. She is not as surprised as Ledrich, or she does not understand that there is a difference between the two titles of Fusion Monster and Lisa. What is the difference? While shaking her leg, her mouth made a sound like bubbles. Gilyalu is like a fish that is vomiting bubbles and chasing the bubbles. There is no brilliance in the hollow eyes. The mythical snail shell called the biological machine tool by Yin Shen was immersed in sea water, only the top was exposed, forming a reef. Two figures, one large and one small, are sitting on this rock. Yin Shen looked at the life that was born, conceived, and then died in the shell. The emotions in the pupils went from anticipation to surprise, and finally turned into disappointment. Yin Shen and the fusion monster Sally who was playing in the water said, "It failed again. Sally, you are simply a black-heart game lottery merchant. The odds are too low." Sally kicked her calf and fiddled with the water. As long as there is no order, she seems to be unable to hear Yin Shen speak. Even if she understood it, she probably wouldn't understand the meaning of the words black heart, lottery, and businessman. Yin Shen then controlled the mythical shell, and started the next experiment and attempt. One after another failed product was created, and it was turned into a dead object when it was born, or it was just a bug without wisdom. These things then turned into nutrients and were swallowed by this snail shell, and started to produce new trilobite eggs. I don't know how many times I failed, and tried countless wrong solutions. The sun rises and sets, cyclically. And the island and the ocean will never change, as if to remain like this until the end of time. Yin Shen finally succeeded. His success will break the immutability of this world. This day, one after another transparent insect eggs rolled out of the huge snail shell. They floated from under the sea and floated on the surface of the sea. The sunlight refracted like shining gems. This is the miracle of life and the birth of a species. Grumbling. The fusion monster Sally cheered. I don't know if it is because of the ecstasy in Yin Shen's heart that she perceives, or because of the three-leaf human eggs on the sea. Recently, he has been carving stones in the temple and learning how to use the language of God at the same time. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com also felt the movement and went straight to the shore of the sea. Yin Shen stood above and below the island, looking at the newborn life. And the Ledley base station is behind him, looking at the life floating on the ocean in disbelief. This is the same trilobite like him. Yin Shen turned around and looked at him with a smile. It worked, Lednik. I have a companion. Lederiki's eyes are lost, he is not alone anymore. This feeling is very strange, a strong emotion echoes in the chest cavity. So this is the race. At the same time, Ledliki is still a bit at a loss. God. After I have a race, what should I do? He speaks better. Yin Shen smiled, you are their king, you should lead them to thrive, and finally build a civilization. A civilization that belongs to you, belongs to the Sanyi people. Lednik looked dazed, what is civilization? Yin Shen looked at the ocean, having his own words, owning his own art, possessing the power to transform and recognize the world, a collective created and condensed by a group of intelligent lives. It can be a city-state or a country. As for what to do, it's up to you to decide. Ledliki looked at Yin Shen's back, wouldn't God teach me? It's up to you to create this civilization. I listen to you in everything. Yin Shen shook his head, I am the God who created you. And you? It's their king. In the warm seawater nest, the trilobites' eggs began to hatch. They didn't have a human form at the beginning, they were more like a bug than a human. But as they grow up in the ocean, the transparent beetle has a little bit of color, and it is no longer transparent and harder. They survive by preying on insects and ancient creatures near the sea. They have no natural enemies. A few years later, they began to have human form. At this time, they heard the voice of a person in their minds, the voice of the origin of their wisdom and consciousness, the ancestor whose blood traced back. Come. Come to me. Come back. Under a powerful summoning power, the people of Sanya climbed up from the bottom of the sea to the coast one by one. They gathered under the feet of the pyramid stone, curiously observing everything around them, looking up at the temple of God. A person who looks exactly like them is standing on the steps of the pyramid facing the sea. Lederiki greeted them at the bottom of the stairs. It was he who sent the signal to call these lives. He stretched out his hand and smiled. He was really happy. There is a special female trilobite in the crowd. Her armor is white, which is different from the others. Is therefore very special and was noticed by Lederiki. Lednik was taken aback for a moment, and then there was waves in his heart. He didn't understand what it was, and he didn't even know that there was an emotion called liking. In front of the magnificent and majestic palace, Yin Shen is also watching the first batch of Sanyi people go ashore. San Yuran. Trilobite. If you call it a human, you can't get rid of the habit of bugs in the end. Although it has a human form, it can live on land and sea at the same time, but it still can't get rid of the shackles of the sea. It needs to reproduce in the ocean. It is still oviparous and can only survive offshore. He looked at the barren ground behind him, like the surface of Mars. This is true on islands, not to mention on land. In such ancient times, only the ocean can hold life. Life is difficult to transform nature, only adapt to nature. Fusion monster Sally stood by the pillars of the temple and looked down at the newly born weak bugs. Even if it was just a harmless visit, it made all the Sanyi people feel the horror from the depths of the blood and the cold in the bones. Is even more daunting than the icy deep sea ditch that can't see the sun. Sanya people can't see Yin Shen, they can only look at the mythological creature's fusion monster in fear. Even if the other party still maintains a human form, petite and exquisite, they can feel what a terrible monster is hiding under the skin. Under Sally's gaze, they trembled and knelt down involuntarily. Finally, he lay down limply under the pyramid, whimpering and whispering in his mouth. Woo-hoo! Woo-hoo! The Ledley base station is under the pyramid, and he is looking up at the high place with the eyes of many trilobites. That is the temple. And Sally, the messenger of God. These newborn lives do not know what is and do not understand the messenger of God. But they can understand, the Supreme Being lives there. Lederiki turned around and raised his hands to all the Sainyi. The tide rolled up and eroded the coast, and an irresistible force overwhelmed their will, directly lifting them from the ground and making them stand up straight again. Get up! Don't be afraid! Because you are God's people, God's believers, and the chosen eldest son of God. Apart from gods in this world, there is nothing worthy of your fear and admiration. Lednicki looked down on the fusion monster Sally, or he had never put the fusion monster in his eyes. From the beginning, he could tell by letting the fusion monster build a pyramid at will. He considers himself the eldest son of God. And the fusion monster is just the servant of the God, he is the substitute of the God. The communication between Lednik and the Sainieran is not so much through voice communication, as it is more like directly branding what you want to say in the other's mind through will. Yin Shen noticed this scene. As expected, Lednik's power is not just about having wisdom. It was only when his race appeared that it fully demonstrated the power of this power. He can summon all the trilobites, can control all the trilobites, and can also transfer his own thoughts into each trilobite's body. No one can defy his will. In other words, he can control all the intelligent life in this world today. This is the power of Lednik, the power of wisdom and consciousness. The power of the ancestor originated from the bloodline that made these trilobites admire looking at Lederiki, with infinite enthusiasm in their eyes. That look! It's like Ledrich watching Yin Shen. Lednik raised his hand and shouted, "From today on, we will be the masters of the earth and the ocean, and the chosen family of the gods who control the world for the gods. And I am your king Ledrich." All the Sainyi people followed and yelled frantically, shouting out of tune and hoarse syllables in anger. King! King! Yin Shen is the creator of Ledrich, the who bestows wisdom on him. And Ledrich is their creator, the supreme king who bestows their lives. Lederiki took them to the valley behind the pyramids, dug one after another in the rock wall, and at the same time built a city with the excavated stones. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. As Yin Shen said, he founded his own city and country in the wild. These caves are connected to the bottom of the sea. In addition to having a city in the valley, going through the cave to the bottom of the sea, there is also a city there. They live on the island and worship gods. Pray in the sea, and breed in the sea. It seems that it has become the place where Nuwa created human beings in myths and legends, the Garden of Eden of God. This small island, insignificant to the earth, has become the beginning of intelligent life, a paradise that does not belong to human beings. Finally, Lederiki finally has a family. He made the female trilobite with a white bone helmet and outer armor his queen, and naturally gave birth to his first child. Lediki, who has a child, took his child up the pyramid with ecstasy and eagerly the moment he climbed to the ground from the sea. Two people, one large and one small, walked to a high place step by step, and finally knelt before they came to the temple. He whispered to his child, "Look! God is watching you there." However, his child looked at the temple with a blank face, except for the huge statue and stone platform, he saw nothing. There is nothing there? Only some stones. Lednik felt cold all over, watching his children reveal incredible and endless disappointment in their eyes. There is sadness and loss in the pupils. And at a loss. He understands that his children cannot see God. His child does not have the glory of seeing God, and his gift given by God. Lederiki kept kneeling under the idol. He felt desperate, his expression as if the sky had fallen. Yin Shen felt funny for his distress and asked him, Why do you want them to see me so much? Lidliki opened his arms and said to Yin Shen on the stage of the gods piously. If I can't see God, how can I believe in God? How to listen to the will of God? Yin Shen asked again, why should they believe in me? Lidliki was suddenly speechless. In his opinion, there is no reason to believe in God. Yin Shen asked again, still talking. Do you think it is important for me that they believe in me? Or that I don't exist without their faith? I'm here, whether they can see me or not, I'm always here. I don't have any will to issue to you, as long as you can thrive and create your own civilization. Lidliki knelt forward and arrived at Yin Shen's feet. We believe in you, not because you need us, but we need you. It's like he thought for a long time and couldn't think of specific adjectives. Until I saw the sea outside and the sun through the pillars of the temple. Like. Life needs water, just like light. Yin Shen smiled, as an atheist. Even if the God who really created the universe is standing in front of him now, he just treats him as a powerful higher being. The concept of God in his heart is completely different from the concept of God in Lidliki's heart. His expression is non-committal, and he is contemptuous of the word God, even if he is called a god. Lednik below, but so determined. But the next words Lidliki said moved Yin Shen. He put his head under the sacred platform and put it on Yin Shen's feet, tears in his eyes. S tone became low, and the tone was a little sad. Inside God. What I fear most is, if one day I die, who will come to this temple to serve you, and who will guard this temple until the end of the years? If even my children can't see you, how can this continue? You are so supreme, you can bestow wisdom and life on all things, you can change this lonely and lifeless world, but you can't change your loneliness. Yin Shen looked at him. He wanted to say that this is just your own thoughts. I don't need anyone to guard this huge tomb, let alone stay in this temple to the end of the years. I will leave one day, you are not guarding me, just a stone. But looking at Lidliki's tears, I don't know why my heart suddenly softened. Then what do you want? Ledniji wiped his tears, and looked up at Yin Shen. I want to create a great civilization, a civilization that will never fade. I want them to enshrine you forever and always surround this temple. I want to make an unforgettable vow with all Sanyi people, let them guard this palace from generation to generation, and engrave my faith in you in my blood. Yin Shen shook his head towards Lednik, who was still innocent. These things only make sense to you, they are meaningless to me. There is no eternal civilization, even the sun in the sky will eventually go out, and the universe is inevitably heading for extinction. No matter how great a civilization is, it can't survive the passage of time. No matter how pious the faith is, it will be forgotten, and no matter how tall and hard the temple and stone statues are, they will eventually collapse into ruins. Lidliki couldn't understand what this meant, but felt that these words run through the years and eternity, and they were mysteries that he could not touch. Yin Shen stroked the bone helmet on his head, his voice was not as indifferent and hollow as usual. But if you are willing to do it, just do it. If these things are what you think is the meaning of life. Ledrich finally said, if one day I die, please God take off one of my things and leave it by your side. So. I will be with God forever. Yin Shen looked at the back of Ledrich leaving the temple, he finally felt that Ledrich was no longer a bug, an object he created casually. He is a living life, a person with feelings. They surround the high temple, constantly expanding the city that belongs to them, and guarding the pyramid and temple in the center. The number of Sanyi people has changed from hundreds to thousands now. This island finally has a hint of civilization and the appearance of a city-state. The Sanyi people understand awe, and civilization has the distribution of power. They dare not call Ledrich the name, call him the king of wisdom, and call this city a Gajavan city. Means that everything is gifted by the gods. A palace was built in the valley behind the pyramids, and Ledriki and his children lived here. Ledriki uses his son to hold various positions in the Gajavan city. Some are responsible for construction, food, and warehouse guards. They hold power and unite thousands of Sanyei people. The originally equal Sanyei people are divided into different classes. The kingdom or city-state of the three-leaf people began to have a simple power system. Ledliki is the king, and his sons are the first trilobite nobles. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. On this day, Ledariki's second son suddenly ran in and knelt in front of him, his face full of panic. The great king of wisdom, someone has been swallowed by the sea again. Ledariki sat on the cold stone seat, looking at his second son. Several people replied, the whole team has not come back. Ledley base station got up, a little worried. It's not just that someone has died, but the hidden crisis behind it. The so-called being swallowed by the sea is the person who entered the deep sea and did not return, and most of them will never return. This is not the first time. With the increase in the number of trilobites, the food they made by catching bugs and soft-tongued snails began to be insufficient. Even if they started to find a way to dry the plants on the bottom of the sea as food, it would not help. Compared to this era, they are like giants. Thousands of people gathered together enough to eat up the sea near the island, and it is impossible to have food on the land. Their appearance is too abrupt to this world is not yet ready to welcome the Sanyei civilization. Someone in the Gajavan city began to starve to death, and they had to go to the deep sea, which was far from peaceful as they thought. The ocean can breed life, and it can also swallow life. Many trilobites were lost in the deep sea, or trapped in a dangerous sea area, or encountered an unexpected situation and never returned. Ledariki knew that the Sanyei civilization encountered its first crisis. If he can't even pass this threshold, let alone building a great civilization, I am afraid that he can only stop here. On the avenue of the Gajavan city, the corpses of the trilobites were placed in front of the wisdom king Ledrich, closing his eyes forever. Hundreds of Sanieran knelt on one knee, and a sad atmosphere echoed in the air. No one in the crowd spoke, but everyone looked at Ledrich, the king of wisdom, the ancestor of their origin, the supreme king. Ledariki put his hand on one of the corpses, and he could feel that the other party was so young, but he had passed away. For the first time, he felt the horror of death and the fragility of life. I will figure out a solution. The sad eyes of all people burst into light. From their point of view, Ledarik's promise is truth and faith, and the will to change the status quo and crisis. A feverish call echoed in the crowd. Makes people feel. Lednik is not their king, but their god. The king of wisdom. The king of wisdom. Ledariki believes that he is the king of wisdom, and as a king, he should naturally protect his people. But he couldn't help it. The king of wisdom could only look at the giant pyramid building in the center of the Gajavan city again. Starry night. Ledariki climbed up the pyramid, and under the tower was a trilobite guarding the stairs. Only the king of wisdom, Ledrich, can enter this temple. It is an unforgivable felony for the other Sanyei to take a step. Before he reached the top, he saw a figure emitting a white light standing on the top of the steps. In the darkness, he is so bright. The light turned into silk threads and wandered in the sky. At a glance, it seemed to be connected to the stars in the sky, and the figure in the light could leave the world at any time. This scene made him shout out involuntarily. God! He stepped forward, climbing a long ladder to chase the light. Seems to be afraid that the light will really disappear into the stars. Sally sat on the steps with pigtails obediently, her big green eyes staring at the distant sea without blinking. A life that is not like an or is more like a doll. God looked at the sky and the stars, and seemed to be waiting for him, and he spoke as soon as Ledliki approached. Do you know? The land of this era should not have any life, but here is the miracle of life. Before we arrived, there was green here. Ledliki also watched along with him, not understanding why God looked at the sky when he was talking about things on the land. The stars in the sky make up for it. After watching it for a long time, it makes people feel easily lost and dizzy, and feel that the stars in the Milky Way are rotating. But Yin Shen seemed to hear Ledrich's heart, and went on to say, because the factors affecting life are not in the earth, but in the distant sky and the universe. This should be close to the poles of the earth, or a very special place, forming a gas layer that can block radiation on top of our heads. It should be the ozone layer, so we can see plants here. Here. It's really a place of miracles, the Garden of Eden of life. Lederiki couldn't understand God's words, so the muttering was not so much for Lederiki, it was more like a divine muttering. But he knew that the gods were explaining the mysteries of this world, the truths that these mortal creatures could not see. When they were swallowed by the sea and feared the endless blue, God's eyes had penetrated the stars and the Milky Way. Lederiki, it was God's guidance that brought us to this miraculous land of life. It is you who let us thrive here, and bless us. Let us have a race and create a civilization. If there is a miracle, God, you are the creator of the miracle. Yin Shen lowered his head, in Ledrich's eyes. The shadow that exudes endless light cast the light down along with it, and enveloped him. Have a problem? Lednik is hard to tell. It was he who assured the gods that he would create a great civilization. He was so confident at the time that he thought he could easily do it. Because he is the eldest son of God and the first intelligent creature created by God. But this was just the beginning, and he was knocked to the ground by difficulties. Over the years, he has understood the emotions of sadness, joy, and love. This time, he understood shame. Ledrich knelt in front of Yin Shen, crawling under his feet with a cold stone face, afraid to look at Yin Shen. Food. God. We need food. Lednik's pitch became much higher, and he said with an extremely pious and serious attitude. God. Please give me guidance. Yin Shen looked at the King of Wisdom, as if he was looking at a child who had not grown up. He picked up Ledrich and walked into the temple. Ledliki lowered his head in shame, listening to God's guidance to point out the future. The most primitive civilization is hunting and gathering, and further civilization will know how to breed livestock and grow crops. The conditions for planting are not yet available, but I can teach you how to grow them. Lederiki heard the word for the first time, farming. Outside the temple, the snail shell shed by Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com Fusion Monster Sally is embedded in the wall, which can also be seen from the inside of the temple. There are stone basins in the temple. Some marine plants that are obviously not land-based are planted in the stone basins, but they have withered and died. Yin Shen clicked the shell, and the light spread from his fingers. The huge spiral shell complied with Yin Shen's control and began to become transparent a little bit. Through the transparent shell, you can see that the shell is filled with pure sea water. There are some strange life in the sea, the most of which is a kind of existence similar to a fish but with a thick carapace. This is a kind of life I have created recently. I want to call it a fish, but I don't think it fits well. Lednik was sticking to the transparent snail shell, looking at the wandering creatures inside. Fish. Yin Shen thought for a moment, just call the ancestor fish. When idle in the temple, Yin Shen is keen to create new life. This is his innumerable hobbies and things he can do in this era. It seems that more and more species and lives can make this world become the one he is familiar with faster. Although he used the random box of Isha's spiral shell more and more conveniently, he still did not create the mythical life like Ledrich and Sally that he wanted, but had several unexpected creations. This is a jawless fish that can only survive by sucking on water creatures through a straw mouth part. They grow armor and look a little scary. Said it was a fish, but it did not belong to a real fish. Yin Shen pointed to the jawless fish in the shell, it is the food I give you. The lively ancestor fish was bouncing in the hands of several of Ledrich's sons, and Ledley's base station was in front of the palace, maintaining his majesty. But his sons couldn't wait to announce to the people of the Gajavan city, standing on the heights and shouting vigorously. Look! This is the food that God has given us. Ancestor fish. Ledariki's eldest son held the original ancestor fish, bent down and looked at everyone with inspiring eyes, and said shocking words in his mouth. God also taught the great king of wisdom how to create food, and we will have a steady stream of food in the future. Starting today, no one will starve to death in the Gajavan city, and there will no longer be any risk of breaking into the deep sea. After he finished speaking, he held the ancestor fish high and knelt towards the pyramid. Raised his hands high and kissed the ground. Looks almost crazy. Ledariki's second son rushed off the stage. God created the King of Wisdom, created us, and created food for us that only the race of the King of Wisdom can enjoy. God is the Supreme Lord who created all things in the world, and the King of Wisdom is the Supreme King of all intelligent creatures. We are the destiny race that controls the earth and the ocean, and the eldest son of God. Only God and the King of Wisdom can guide us and bring us light. They snarled and raised their arms in a deafening voice. Some time ago, some people actually began to question the majesty of the King of Wisdom and the power of God. A few people wanted to leave the Gajavan city to find a way out, and their status was also threatened. Although Ledrich, the King of Wisdom, has a mind that can control the power of all Sainyi, he is obviously unwilling to directly enslave all Sainyi in this way, as if God did not force his will. Ledrich's sons are eager to announce such shocking news. Let everyone know the stalwart power of God to create all things, and the identity of the King of Wisdom as the substitute of God is also demonstrating their rights and status. They are the sons of the King of Wisdom, and they should be born to replace the gods and the King of Wisdom to dominate all living beings. The rough and simple buildings built by huge stones were full of trilobites. The front of the palace of the King of Wisdom was crowded with people. Their outer armor was dark or light, tall or short, and men and women were divided into different groups and stood on both sides. All the Sainiaran looked up at the King of Wisdom and the Gajavan thing. Under the sun, the ancestor fish refracted and exudes light. Ledariki finally spoke at this time. He appeared to be more calm and steady than his sons. He has been imitating his creator in some respects, as if the aloof should speak like this, and the words are more convincing. We are a race loved by God. In this world, whether it is the earth or the ocean, there is no difficulty that can stump us. We are destined to become the most brilliant civilization, always shining under the stars. There was an explosion of cheers from the crowd, and the noisy voice overturned the entire Gajavan city, even reaching the temple of the pyramid. Inside God, the King of Wisdom, nothing can defeat us. We will finally dispel all darkness and conquer the sea. This time, all Sainyi people felt the greatness of God. Hope is surging on everyone's face. A large area on the island is swamp, with plants growing under the water and moss on the edges. Some of these swamps are directly connected to the sea, while others are independent, changing with the rising and falling tides. The trilobites of the Gajavan city gathered around these swamps, carrying large stone basins one after another, in which ancestor fish, large and small, were tumbling and splashing water. Wow! Sainyi people poured the ancestor fish into a swamp, wet many people present, but everyone laughed, completely unlike the usual silence before. Hurry up! There is still there. Then the place where the high tide connects was blocked with stones, and the place was enclosed. Does it increase as long as I pour it in? The King of Wisdom says so. This is something given by God's gift, and there are methods given by God's gift. When Ledrich, the King of Wisdom, walked over, everyone knelt down to meet him, and lined up in a line in front of the swamp and the coast. Ledlicky's eyes fell on his sons, and their eyes showed expectation, hoping that Ledlicky would choose themselves. This is a position with greater power than other powers. Once you have mastered the ancestor fish given by the gods, you have mastered the food of the entire Gajavan city. But the King of Wisdom finally looked at his eldest daughter. She had the same white outer armor as the queen, and she was as thin and slender as the queen. Starting today, you are responsible for guarding the ancestor fish. It is our food and the future of the land given by God. She looked at the King of Wisdom in surprise, and then knelt down. Great King of Wisdom! I must guard these ancestor fish and fulfill the duties you entrusted to me. That's it. The female group of Sanyi people also began to control their rights. A large number of female trilobites followed the eldest daughter of the King of Wisdom to look after and breed ancestor fish in the swamp. Most of the time, they would dive into the water and observe the fish under the water. Is like a herder driving her sheep. The female trilobites first bred these ancestor fish in the marshes on the island. They fed the ancestor fish according to the method taught by the yin and looked after them according to the habits of the ancestor fish. Reading www.yuyugonshu.com. They watched the ancestor fish start to reproduce and become more and more, is like copying and growing. In the eyes of Sanyi people, this method of cultivating ancestor fish contains infinite secrets, and it is the supreme power of the gods. They have mastered the knowledge imparted by the gods, mastered the power of reproduction and control of life. The gods changed their way of fishing and survival, and since then they have truly controlled the way of survival in the world. Ledlicky's eldest daughter stood in a swamp surrounded by stones, watching one after another ancestor fish being caught, blooming with vitality of life. All the trilobites cheered for the good harvest, and there was a scene on the coast next to the swamp. The white female Sanyi sighed, life is really full of miracles. But the gods can easily create and bestow such miracles, what an incredible power this is. Through this, they finally got rid of the trouble of food. They live in a Gajavan city, rely on breeding and fishing for their livelihoods, and worship Lednik. As the King of Wisdom said, this place is truly a Gajavan place, a place blessed by gods. In the swamp, several ancestor fish swim freely, asking for tiny creatures as food in the sand. They suddenly went deep, and were surprised to find a hole leading to the ocean. Goo! The water bubble emerged, and the leading fish dived into the hole. The ancestor fish left the swamp and went deep into the vast ocean. From this moment, a new species appeared in the ocean. The food problem was solved, and the Gajavan city was completely settled down and began to prosper again. Thousands of people are not their limit. Lednik wants to build a city-state of tens of thousands, or even 100,000. As for more, Lednik couldn't imagine what a city-state with more people would look like. He stood on the high wall of the palace, looking at the buildings in the Gajavan city. In addition to the houses where they live, there are places for drying salt in the city, workshops for drying food, warehouses for storing food, giant wells connected to the sea, and other buildings. Looking at a swamp surrounded by stones in the distance, the female trilobite jumped into the water and drove away the fish. He created many things to make this place alive. I once made a promise to God to create a great civilization that will never fade. Let everyone here guard the gods and worship the gods. 10,000 years, 100,000 years, 1,000,000 years. Until eternal. He turned to look at his queen. You said I can do it. The queen looked at Ledlik admiringly, her eyes full of tenderness and longing. You are the King of Wisdom, the eldest son of God, and the source of all the spirits of wisdom. You can definitely do it. Ledlik smiled, grabbing his backhand and looking towards the sea and the setting sun. Yes. I can do it, and I will do it. Because this is my promise to God, my oath to the Supreme Insai. In the sunset sun, the city is busy. The eldest daughter who had returned from fishing and other female trilobites raised the catch aloft among the crowd of guards, winning cheers, and both of them showed approving expressions in their eyes. At this time, Ledariki's eldest son and second son ran over. Having experienced the last crisis, several of Ledariki's sons felt uneasy. They decided to record the myth of the mighty power of God's creation of life and the legend of the King of Wisdom. Is used to show the greatness of God, and the power of the King of Wisdom, Lednik. Uses this to tell everyone the dignity of their blood, that they are the people chosen by God. They carved the story of God and the King of Wisdom on the front of a boulder, and carved the story of the King of Wisdom leading the Sanyi to create civilization on the back. They planned to erect this stele at the entrance of the Gajavan city. Ledlaki looked at the erected white boulder, watching the scenes of carved patterns, scenes of gods descending on the earth and the ocean, and scenes of gods guiding them to this blessed place. Scenes were all about Rider. Nietzsche experienced it firsthand. But, he always felt that something was missing. Like? Is missing the civilized atmosphere created by a wise race. It's not so much a mythical epic, it's more like a group of wild men living in the wild carving their incomprehensible miracle chapters on the cave wall. Correct. There is no text yet. Lednik remembered what God said to him when he created the tribe. A true civilization should have its own writing, its own art and philosophy, and the power to transform and recognize the world. Lederiki came to ask Yin Shen again, what should the words of God look like? The gods are looking at the fusion strange spiral shells embedded on the wall of the temple, as if looking at a huge transparent water tank. He is watching the creatures inside swimming around, while walking slowly along this stone wall. Have you not created your own words yet? Lederik followed Yin Shen, God. You haven't taught Lednik the gods. Lednik only learned how to speak with Yin Shen, but never learned how to write with Yin Shen. Yin Shen shook his head, my words belong to me, it is my memory and goodness. It does not belong to you, nor does it belong to the Sainyi. He looked at Ledlaki. Text is the most important thing to carry a civilization. Since you want to create a civilization that belongs to the Sainyi people, you should create a text that belongs to you alone. Yin Shen did not directly teach him his own writing. In his opinion, it belongs to human beings, not Sainyi people. Lederiki was a little at a loss, he didn't know where to start. Before today, he didn't even have a precise idea of whether he should have words. Yin Shen clicked on the fusion strange shell, the transparent shell instantly became no longer transparent, but the lines radiating light flowed vertically. Drew a circle on it between his fingers, and drew light at the same time. This is the sun. Lednik seems to understand but not understand. He drew a simple crescent moon below and told Ledlaki. This is the moon. Lederiki understood. In his opinion, words are simplified patterns. He drew a wave on the shell. Said, this is water. Then he drew 3 waves and shouted excitedly. This is the sea. Under the guidance and teaching of God, one initial word after another was created. Looking at the weird symbols written all over the shell, Ledlaki's eyes were shining, and he clenched his hands. Word. A kind of thing that originated from a picture, but is more powerful than a picture. He felt that these symbols were full of magical power, capable of expressing all the mysteries and secrets of the world, and passed on for a long time. Life and race seem to have become different and otherworldly because of the possession of words. Reading www.yuyuganshu.com. The life and race without words are two completely different existences from the race with words. And they took this step. Sainuran's words, they don't need to know the beasts and plants. They only need to know the sun, moon, and stars. They don't need to know machinery and technology, they only need to know wind, fire, thunder, and electricity. They don't know the world from a wide range of fields and angles, and there are not many things they need to know and understand. Therefore, it is not that difficult to create words that belong to them. Lederiki is good at sculpting. He carved a slate in his palace to record all the words he created. Then they summoned their sons and subjects and announced that they finally had words. The sons and subjects are confused, they don't understand the meaning of words so much. And Lederiki demonstrated the use of words to the world for the first time, and the first thing they recorded was a myth. The stone monument erected in front of the Gajavan city not only has patterns, but also carved characters. God created all souls, created his eldest son, Ledrich, the king of wisdom, and then created his servant Sally, the mother of life. Everyone looked up at the patterns and symbols, and some clever Sainyi people even guessed the meaning of the words based on the relief. It turns out that God is like this. For the first time, they truly felt the existence of the gods and understood the miracles performed by the gods. After having written characters, the civilization of the Sanyei people began to develop further. They began to get rid of barbarism and ignorance, and they could truly be worthy of the two characters of civilization.